Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode, we're going to be taking a look at a piece by the career 3D artist Jared Pike. This episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about tranquility through tone. We're going to talk about the Dreamcore aesthetic. We're also going to talk about the immense impact or influence of Pike's Dream Pool series. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, you're met with the scene of a single set of pool steps right below this paneless window. And I say paneless because it appears that there's no streaks of light. It almost just looks like a kind of like a hole in the wall. But of course, that does allow light to pass through it. It's a very calm, it's a very classic introduction. There's not too much going on here, so it is a very, very tranquil scene for sure, a very nice introduction. And so in the realm of color, we see mostly this kind of lucid lilac mixing with, say, a pinkish, maybe very light purple tones. This is it's a pretty bright spatial composition, although it's not, overpowering. There's not too much visual energy here. Although it is a bright piece, it's not too much. It's not too intense, and it is very calm here for sure. And so light definitely draws that, whether we see those accents there, whether it's those kind of lighter tones in the light sky, all of those work to really kind of reinforce that sense of energy here, but not too much energy. And so in the realm of texture, we see pretty smooth, pretty sleek surfaces here. Of course, we also have the area of water, so a little bit of ruffles, a little bit of roiling kind of energy within that as well. And then you also see, of course, the clouds. That always gives a really unique texture as well, and those are always a very good example. Clouds, any gases or smoke, always really good examples of texture for sure. And there's also this kind of pastel sense of this piece as well. The colors feel very light, they feel very delicate, and so with that, that really does remind of a kind of pastel color palette. So a pastel piece for sure. And so we also talked a little bit about this kind of calm work. We don't see any people sitting within this scene. There's not too much going on here. The water isn't quite completely calm, but it is quite calm. It's not splashing around or going crazy. So it is quite calm, quite tranquil visual experience for us here. And so also I want to talk a little bit about the Dreamcore aesthetic. And Dreamcore art has seen an immense amount of virality recently. And if anyone's confused, the best way that it honestly is quite vague and quite wide-ranging, but people normally refer to the Dreamcore aesthetic as a kind of hazy visual experience or a abnormal visual experience or some type of surreal lighting. So two of those I would say don't really count, but one do for sure. So the first one that I'm seeing here the only one that I'm seeing here is going to be this kind of sense of the abnormality. Of course, the window does not have a pane. There's no chairs around here. There's no people. So it does feel kind of like a surreal or a little bit of an abnormal setting here. But we do not see a hazy visual experience, and we don't see anything like a strange amount of light. The light here does feel quite natural. It does follow what we would traditionally expect in the real world. So those two don't really count for Dreamcore, but I would say this kind of abnormality of form in this kind of strange scene here, that does feel more like the Dreamcore aesthetic. And Dreamcore aesthetic and kind of the liminal spaces and the movements of liminal spaces and all of the art within that have kind of meshed together. So people often refer to them as one and the same, although they could be kind of separated and distributed distinctly as well. And so this was made in the digital rendering medium of expression, and this is extremely important because there have been some people who are kind of deceived by this. They think that this might actually be a real place, and I don't blame them. Of course, the digital rendering provides probably one of the most accurate kind of visual experiences possible in comparison to the real world. Although light can get a bit off, kind of light sources can get a bit strange in some of these 3D artist pieces, but this feels, very real, and the digital rendering, of course, very realistic, so that does deceive some people. Some people think that these are real places. We've even seen some people actually mix animation, such as Matt Studios. He mixes animation with the digital rendering in order to create something that feels literally real. His pool rooms piece that we just did recently, it actually does feel inspired by Jared Pike's works. It's just an amazing piece, and of course, it does deceive you, just like this scene here. It feels real for sure, so very intriguing, and I think that's also important to note. And so we're looking at the first piece of the Dream Pool series, and the Dream Pool series is really what Pike is known for so far. He has made absolute waves with this series, and you'll see he mixes these kind of simple, kind of vaporwave type of pools with a very clean, very sterile aesthetic, and then he also mixes kind of the liminal spaces as well often. So liminal space could be, say, the stairs, a transition space from the pool to the outside. And so liminal spaces are spaces of transition by definition. I forgot to mention that. So this is kind of a space of transition, coming out of the pool, and then kind of the walkway all around that as well. Maybe even the the kind of windowless or this paneless window here, these three could all be considered as a liminal space, whether it's the transition space of light into the space, whether it's the kind of walking area, or whether it's the area of transition from the pool to the outside the pool. So all of those do feel like a space of transition, a liminal space technically. Then it also mixes with, say, the very sterile sense, this kind of surreal, this kind of sterile, sterile surreality? I don't know how to say that. You know, it mixes here. It feels very sterile. It feels very surreal. So it's very nice here. And it does feel like a vaporwave pool. Of course, you have those, what would you call like that very sterile, that very clean grid there. All of that feels like a liminal space as well as the influences as well. So with that in mind, we see the Dream Pool series is primarily defined by its liminal space and its vaporwave pool. So that two mixes, you know, we've seen just an immense amount of influence from that. You've seen artists trying to replicate this tirelessly since about, I believe this piece was in December of 2020. So since then, we've just seen an incredible amount of influence, especially in the world of liminal spaces and, say, the vaporwave pools. So Jared Pike is a name that everyone should know for sure. And that really is the reason I'm showcasing this piece today. This is the first one that started this entire movement. So I thought it was important for me to go back to take a look at this. And I actually brought some of the works as well. So we're going to throw that away. So this is the first work ever showcased. So this is Dream Pool 2. I'm going to keep it the same size. So if I have that correctly, that should be in the same order. So this was the first piece ever showcased by Jared Pike in the Dream Pool series. And then you'll see just from the first piece to the second piece, he really set the tone for almost the entire series after that. So definitely a large difference between these two, a bit of variation. And then from then, that really sets that kind of stylistic identity, eventually to even turn back against that stylistic identity to try something new. So we see, you know, the evolution of the Dream Pool over time. Just incredible to see that. And of course, it's all attributed to this first piece that started this immense amount of virality in the immense influences of the vaporwave and the liminal spaces. So yeah, just an amazing piece. And I wanted to make sure to show you guys, we haven't showcased this piece, although this was the second one. So I wanted to make sure to note that. We have written about number one now. We've written about this piece, this one, and then as well one of his latest works as well. So really excited to add another Jared Pike to the collection. Always fun really showing this, and I wanted to show you guys the influence from the first Dream Pool all the way to the second, you know, all already in a massive variation, and then of course setting the stylistic identity to eventually be turned back from, say, in a much more later variation. So yeah, really good example, and I thought that that was the best one that we could show. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. You know, we talked little bit about tranquility through tone. We talked about the Dreamcore aesthetic, the vaporwave pool, and of course Jared Pike's Dream Pool series, which has gone on to spark an immense amount of influence. So hope you guys enjoyed. We first showcased Jared Pike actually in, I believe it was in June of 2021. So that was our first quarter of our first year ever. So Jared Pike has a very historic place in the Apollo Art Archive, and I just wanted to make sure to go to the roots and kind of tie it all together. So I hope you guys enjoyed today. Hope you guys learned something. Go check out Jared Pike's other collections. He's always doing some really good stuff. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.